How to assess hate speech incidents. All forms of hate speech need to be tackled, but according to international law, only hate speech that reaches the level of incitement to discrimination, hostility, violence or genocide should be prohibited and punishable by law. So how can we tell if a particular hate speech incident amounts to incitement? The United Nations Rabat Plan of Action presents 6 assessment criteria that guide the drafting of legislation and for courts to use when making judgments. The criteria are useful for civil society too, providing a tool to help monitor the severity of hate speech and choose appropriate responses. So what are the criteria and how can you apply them? Number 1. The context. Hate speech only counts as incitement if discrimination and violence are likely to happen as a result. Groups with a long history of negative stereotyping are much more likely to face violence and discrimination than groups that are respected in a society. So the first thing to ask is, does the hate speech incident target a group that's vulnerable in this context? Do group members regularly face discrimination or violence because of their identity? And are there widespread negative stereotypes of the group? Number 2. The speaker. The speaker's status, role and credibility influence the audience's reaction. And some speakers, like public servants, have legal obligations to treat people equally. So you can ask yourself, what type of speaker is it? A public servant, politician, religious leader, or social media influencer, for example? What credibility and influence do they have in the eyes of their audience? Number 3. Intent. It's really hard to determine the intent of the speaker, but it's important to try. Do the speaker's past actions and statements, or their behaviour after the incident, say something about their intent? Number 4. Content and form. This looks at how the message has been formulated, asking how direct, provocative and aggressive was the message, and did it include a call to action? Number 5. Extent and reach. This looks at how publicly and widely the message was spread. Was it in a private Facebook chat or a viral public social media post, for example? How big an audience was reached? And finally, number 6, the likelihood of action. Can you identify any incidents of discrimination or violence that have taken place as a direct result of the hate speech concerned? Usually, it's hard to establish a clear cause and effect relationship between a single hate speech incident and specific acts of discrimination and violence. But you can assess if the speaker could reasonably expect their audience to respond with discrimination or violence. Has the intended audience of the message previously behaved in a violent or discriminatory manner towards the group concerned? Together, these criteria build a picture of how serious the hate speech is and whether it reaches the level of incitement to discrimination, hostility, and violence. If it reaches that threshold, it should be illegal. But remember, all hate speech needs to be tackled, and the law is only one tool. Perhaps more important are broad multi-actor strategies to prevent and counter hate and to spread alternative, positive stories that reflect the dignity of all people.